is wrong. How should the US deal with the security threats that may be directed against it? Look, it's very simple. Were the US not to be present militarily and have military bases in 60 countries in the world, there would be no security threats to the US whatsoever. Invading more countries and occupying them doesn't decrease the threat, it increases it. As every single intelligence agency in the West has pointed out, the war in Iraq increased the attraction of terrorism as a philosophy for large numbers of young people. That is what did it. It was the war in Iraq. And the war in Afghanistan is carrying on doing that. And we should be aware of that. And certainly the more intelligent people within the American ruling elite are aware of it. So the responsibility is something which is theirs, and they have to, understand what they're doing to the world and why there's blowback. Which we don't support that type of blowback, naturally, but we have to understand the causes as to why it takes place. Because if you don't understand the causes, you then tend to demonize people. And that demonization is extremely unfortunate. It leads to what? It led to anti-Semitism in the 20s and 30s and 40s, when every single Jew was almost automatically called by the extreme right and the conservative right and the moderate right, Jews are Bolsheviks. That is what used to be said. When they stopped Jews from coming in, didn't give them asylum in this country or the United States, they're too left-wing. Bolshevism, Jews, that is being done to Islam today, Islam terrorism. As if somehow the entire culture is affected by these things. And it's astonishing that people who are very strong on anti-Semitism today do not see the analogy with Islamophobia. John Rose made some points about Obama. I by and large agree. I would just say that it's one thing to say stop building new settlements. That is positive, obviously. But the more difficult thing is to say remove all the illegal settlements that have been built. Settlements, there can't be, the only possible basis for two states. I don't believe it will happen. That's why I'm for a single state solution, have been for some time. One Israel-Palestine with the same laws and the same rights for Jews and Muslims and Christians. But a two-state solution on this basis, even if there weren't any more settlements, is actually not feasible. At the very least, Israel has to make a total withdrawal to the 67 frontiers before that comes into play. And they're not prepared to do that. On Gaza, I agree with what has been said. It was quite a decisive event. What is interesting, which brings me to another question that was posed, was that neither Egypt nor Turkey even had the guts. I know what Adrian said at Davos, but concretely, neither Egypt nor Turkey, two Muslim states in the region who recognize Israel, or one is secular technically, but with large Muslim populations, had the nerve to even withdraw their ambassadors from Jerusalem. The only two countries that did that were Venezuela and Bolivia, expelled the Israeli ambassadors. And US policies in Iraq and the Middle East are not going to work. They know that. They have no real solution as to how to get out of it. And their policies in Latin America, of course, have failed miserably. But the difference between the Middle East is direct military occupation by the United States because of the oil. And in Latin America, for a long time, they haven't gone in for direct occupations as such. And they've been dependent. This is one characteristic of American imperialism. It prefers to use local relays to do its dirty work, as in Britain. And it does the same in Latin America, and all these relays have been toppling. And the way they've been toppled is very interesting, which is also new. Giant social movements from below, anti-capitalist, anti-privatization movements, creating a new atmosphere, throwing up new political parties and new political formations, which contest the elections and defeat the oligarchies and the elites. It is this that has given Latin America its glow, and it's impossible to attack it. It becomes very difficult for Washington to attack it. And which is why Chavez and Morales have all set up now 5 states, the ALBA states, the Bolivarian republics, and they have totally defeated American attempts to isolate them. By telling Lula in Brazil and Bachelet in Chile, you may not agree with us, but you've got to defend us against any outside attacks on our sovereignty, which Lula and Bachelet did. Lula actually said to Obama, you have got to understand that Chavez is a critically important figure in Latin American politics today. You can't treat him the way the United States has been treating him. And at the meeting in Trinidad, there was a retreat, an official retreat, because none of the Latin American states gathered there, with the exception of Trinidad and Mexico, Caribbean and Latin American states, agreed to sign the joint statement. They all said, we're not going to sign it because you've still got the blockade on Cuba. We are not signing it. And they didn't sign it, and then when Obama went to shake hands with Chavez, Chavez gave him a copy of Galeano's book. Which he has the habit of doing. He referred to Noam Chomsky at the UN and put Chomsky on the bestseller list for a few weeks. Galeano. So I asked his chief of staff, what have I done? And he told me, he said, no, but you see, we had already given your book Pirates of the Caribbean. I said, who did you give it to? And they said to Medvedev, the Russian president. I said, thanks. You know, I eagerly await the Russian edition. So the changes in Latin America are interesting. But, you know, again, I'm cautious about that. Some people talk about revolutions. These are not revolutions. They're very important, but they are not revolutions. The power of the state apparatus in these countries has not been broken. And as long as it isn't totally broken, there is always a possibility of new coup